It took me 2 restarts and 4 hours to start truly enjoying Rain World. I tell you this partly as a warning and partly in the hopes it'll arouse some morbid curiosity, a trait that would serve you well going into this one. If you're recoiling at the very idea of investing so much effort into something before seeing anything resembling a payoff, then Rain World probably isn't for you, but I hope you'll at least hear what I have to say and consider stepping outside your comfort zone for this one. Before we go any further, I'll be explaining a few early game mechanics by the time this video is over, so if you'd rather go in totally blind, which is what I recommend, now's your chance to stop watching. My only advice is that you choose the Survivor instead of the Monk. Everything else can wait, you can always come back to this video later. As human beings, we've long since divorced ourselves of the predator-prey relationship we would have once endured. If you've ever been curious what it must have been like for our distant ancestors who had to rely on their cunning to survive another day, Rain World is the closest you can get to that experience short of stripping off your clothes and sprinting naked into what's left of the jungle. In Rain World you become a slugcat, a half-nimble, half-clumsy creature whose greatest asset is the wits you'll imbue them as the player. It's a post-apocalyptic wasteland filled with threats of every imaginable variety, and now you're on your own. Any game could use this as a premise, slapping this theme like a coat of paint over tried and true mechanics, but Rain World is willing to shatter conventions in service of the experience it seeks to convey. First of all, for this game to truly succeed, it needed to coerce players into behaving like an animal, which is what the core loop is all about. Rain World lives up to its name because every 10 minutes or so a torrential downpour drowns anything not tucked into a shelter. Rest is only possible once you've eaten 4 pips worth of food, forcing you to scavenge the wastes for sustenance. If you successfully hibernate before the rain arrives, this meter will increase, but if you die it goes down instead. Progress between areas is gated by locks, which are dependent on these symbols. Think of it like a key card with 5 levels of security. Staying alive raises your clearance, but dying lowers it. In other words, when you die, you don't just lose whatever progress you made in your current life, your keycard gets rolled back 1 level as well. Don't think you can save scum your way around this either. Quitting more than 30 seconds into a new cycle gets counted as a death. Needless to say, this is an incredibly punishing mechanic, especially compared to contemporary games which have trended away from harsh penalties for failure. If you're of the mentality that every game should be maximally fun, then Rain World is your worst nightmare, but if you go in with a more open mind, you might find it unparalleled at what it does. Blindly charging toward new areas in search of shelter will often get you killed, so rather than try to brute force progress, it's sometimes better to tentatively explore around your current nest, then retreat when necessary. Doing this, you can get a feel for the local wildlife, familiarise yourself with the area, and experiment with whatever else might be nearby. Given how much is at stake, finding the right balance between inquisitiveness and caution is vital for dealing with the ecosystem, which is one of the most impressive aspects of Rain World. Every other creature has goals of their own. Maybe that goal is hunting you, maybe you're nothing more than a distraction or collateral damage. Animation is physics driven, which looks pretty goofy at first, but allows some animals to have complex behaviours that would be impractical to animate more rigidly. These critters are then dropped into the world and left to roam about as far as their limbs will take them. As a result, every cycle is slightly different and the full range of behaviour available to other creatures only becomes apparent over time, so you might find the way you deal with threats or navigate the environment evolve as you gain more experience. Not long after setting out, I found myself staying in a quiet place, just moving Slugcat around various obstacles as smoothly as I could, getting used to the controls. What was happening on screen looked like an animal testing its limits so as to build survival skills, and it was then that I knew this system was a resounding success. That said, I felt the need to do this because of how strange the controls feel at first. Cinematic platformers have long been eschewing the notion that responsiveness is always something to strive for, but even those acquainted with the genre might find Rain World's controls off-putting. The end result is similar, causing a feeling of disempowerment compared to most games, but Slugcat's movement is also partly physics-driven, resulting in a sort of floppiness. With time and persistence it does get better, but at first it feels about as awful as a game reasonably can before you start to question if it was secretly developed by arcane kids. Another bitter pill to swallow is the difficulty, which is relentlessly high and sometimes crosses a line. With such sprawling, open levels, it's hard to say what does or doesn't qualify as a fair ambush, but it certainly seems unfair, frequently. Slugcats are reliant on narrow pipes to move from one area to another, and occasionally a lizard just happens to be on the other side waiting to clamp down before you can react. In true old-school cinematic platformer style, the camera is stationary, which is one of the few questionable design choices even if you're willing to accept a game which is intentionally awkward and frustrating at times. In a rare act of mercy, the scene transitions at about 80% in either of the horizontal directions, but moving vertically you'll be forced to go off screen before you get to see what's next, which can and does go wrong. Granted, this is a technical constraint, which pays off in other ways, but that doesn't mean it's not a flaw. Nothing about it reinforces the goal of seeing the world through the eyes of a slug cat. Pretty negative recommendation video so far, but what else would you expect from something as bleak and depressive as Rain World? Game developers have a habit of romanticizing nature, but we know reality is much more complex than that. Spider webs may be graceful in their intricacy, but they aren't decoration, they're a means of immobilizing prey. Long-time viewers might have guessed that fairness is about the closest I ever get to defining a single trait which every game should have. In retrospect, I suppose that originates from a simple desire to correct a flaw in our own imperfect reality. Life can be unfair, tremendously so, but games give us the opportunity to craft a better set of rules where skill, intelligence, or compassion are consistently rewarded. As much as it pains me to say, most games are just wish fulfillment when you dig down to that deeper level. Rain World isn't. Don't get me wrong, slug cats are rewarded for deepening their knowledge and skills, but only to the extent allowed by their ecosystem. You can't control everything, or even most things. All you can do is play the hand you're dealt. Any game with a % chance to hit is making this claim already, but rather than some poorly considered holdover of pen and paper dice rolling, Rain World still allows for perfect control over the protagonist. If it is unfair, at least it's unfair in a fair way. Point is, the random, unpredictable and brutal nature of Rain World isn't some mistake, it's the natural result of building a system which reflects reality rather than improves it. I don't know if I would encourage other developers to take this approach, but I'm grateful it exists, both because it challenges some assumptions about what games should be, and because it is genuinely beautiful in its own way. Not just because the visuals are screen after screen of the most gorgeous 2D environments you'll ever see, or because the soundtrack, while sparse, perfectly accentuates the setting and themes with its dark, unsettling synths. Rain World's worth comes from a much more fundamental place. Some say that truth is beauty and vice versa. I'm not convinced of that myself, but at the very least I think sincerity can be and often is the aspect of art we find the most beauty in. Some of the highest praise you'll ever hear about a work, be it a painting, book, film, game or any other medium, is that it illuminates something about the human condition. Rain World might be about a slug cat instead, but maybe humans and slug cats are more similar than different. If we wanted to, we could probably build art pieces that mimicked the look and feel of spider webs. Maybe someone already has. An artist could create the largest or smallest, most intricate web ever made, totally beyond the capability of any spider. It could be an impressive tapestry of shape and colour with its own unique, worthwhile value, but no matter how much effort was put into it, it could never fully capture the beauty of the real thing. The enchanting thing about a spider web is the contrast between its superficial elegance and the dark reality of its purpose. The synthesis of those aspects forms the truth, and in that truth there's a type of beauty. Rain World is also artificial, so it could never perfectly encapsulate anything about our own world, but it might just be the closest any game has ever come to bridging that gap.